Hello, 12A. Welcome back. So I think we're on the 10th of April, period 6. So almost finished your first week of classes, unless they're going to make us have Saturday classes. But let's keep our fingers crossed that doesn't happen. So in accordance with the planner, we're going to look at your own podcast. Now, because I'm not there, I can't get you to be doing group activities or group work. And while I do trust you, I am concerned that you're going to be speaking Chinese primarily, other than when you're listening to me or actually in the class. So yeah, I don't have anyone to monitor you. And it's just really important that you be practicing your speaking as much as possible. Again, you're going to be in another country speaking English quite soon, and the more you practice, the better you'll become, the more confident you'll be, and life's just going to be generally more easy for you. So that is the purpose of your podcast. So I sent a few weeks ago, I might have to get someone to resend it because I can't find the list of groups, but I put each of you into a small group, and that is going to be your podcast family. Okay, so you're going to be in a small podcast family with some other classmates. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be creating a weekly podcast that you're then going to present to the class, and you're going to film it and then send that through to me. I know it's going to be filmed and it's not just vocal, but if you've got I'm sure someone has a voice recorder as opposed to using filming it, but that's okay. But you will be actually presenting your podcast in front of the class. All right. So the first one you're going to be presenting. So you've got a week to do the first podcast. As far as the rest, I'm just looking at our planner. But anyway, we're going to start working on them today and getting our ideas, and then next week you're going to have some time to do some research and get some practice done as well. So before we start all of that, I just want to talk a little bit more about what a podcast is and what you're going to be doing. So let's jump onto Press to the Internet. All right, so here's just some fantastic podcasts. So I just looked up top podcasts, and we've got This American Life. I listen to that. I love that. Serial is really good. They go like really deep dive research, investigative journalism, which is heaps of fun. My favorite, Murderer, is about murderers. So literally your podcast can be about anything, and Stuff You Should Know, which I'm sure that you're aware is my absolute favorite podcast. I consider those boys my friend. So in your group, what you're going to be doing today, in your group, you're going to choose, first of all, what your topic, is it not what your topic, what your podcast is going to be about. So it can be about anything. If I just, Nisha. I must have deleted it. So things that you could do, like if you like insects or hate insects, you could do a podcast on do we need them, for instance. Is there, if you might choose an insect every week, an ant, for instance, and everybody will go off and do their research and come back, and then you can talk, you do your 5-minute, 10-minute podcast on that particular insect, and then the next week you choose a slug, and so on and so forth, and the outcome would be, do we need them, yes or no? So it's nice and simple. You might want to choose murderers, in particular serial killers in China, and every week just choose a different serial killer. You might want to talk about nature and choose strange exotic animals, a different animal each time. Stuff You Should Know is great because they talk about anything, and it's just interesting facts from anywhere. So in your group, have a think about what you could do, and you could have to remember that there's going to be at least 7 or thereabout weeks that you're going to have to do. So you're going to have at least 7 that you can do within that. And at the end, it should be an interesting thing that you're going to be able to keep with you forever and listen back in 20 years' time at you guys doing your own little podcast. And it's a great way to get you guys researching and get you guys speaking. Okay. And I do want there to be a Q&A at the end of every podcast, as if it's kind of a live podcast. Okay. So for more inspiration, this is just the Wikipedia Stuff You Should Know page. Now they've been going since 2008, and you can see these are all of the titles of everything they've done. So there is no end to topics that you could actually write about. And again, so if there's something that, like, if you're really religious and you want to talk about the Bible, or if you hate religion, you could make it anti-religious and every week have a different religious community that you don't like. They've got things like Scooby-Doo. If you like animation, you could do one about animation, cults. So it's just to let you know, there's no end to ideas, and you can do a podcast on pretty much anything. Okay. So now we're just going to spend 6 minutes listening to the recording of a podcast. Although it's called the Internet Roundup, so it is on YouTube, but I couldn't find them doing just recording their usual podcasts. But I want you to get a bit of an idea of what it can look like, what you need to do. So you're going to watch this, and then I'll show you the sheet that you need to be working on.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Internet Roundup.
Yes, welcome.
That is Josh. I'm Chuck, and we do the Stuff You Should Know podcast, and once a week we round up the internet with a couple of neato stories, and this one just came over the wire.
Did it?
Came over the wire from NPR via a journal called Alcoholism, Clinical and Experimental Review.
Yeah.
Which is a real drag.
Yeah, that's
to read.
It's a somber journal.
What they did was
they don't have like cocktail recipes in the back.
No, I don't think so. How to Make the Perfect Manhattan by Josh. What they did was they did a study, and researchers looked at data from 672 pairs of adult twins, interviewed twice, a decade apart,
Yes.
some fraternal, some identical.
This is a pretty. They suspect the genes might be at work, I think.
Yes, but they all shared the same environment. What they were looking to do was determine what your income and lifestyle had to do with your drinking patterns.
Right. And they did a great job controlling for all that stuff by interviewing twins.
Sure.
Fraternal twins, and what's the other kind?
Identical.
Oh yeah, identical twins.
Right.
And
those are fraternal.
10 years, right?
Yeah.
And 10 years apart. I mean, like it was pretty well controlled study.
I agree.
And what they found is that their hypothesis was correct, that income has a greater impact on your drinking habits than your genes do.
Right.
And what they found was that if you're of a higher income level, you are more likely to be a drinker.
Yes.
But you're also more likely to moderate it.
That's right. And if you have a lower income, there's a lot more variation in how you drink. Some didn't drink at all.
Mm-hmm.
Some drank heavily.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you have more money, you're just going to drink more, but less.
Yeah. Well,
does that make sense?
Yes. So, and they kind of took it another step further and said, well, what's behind this? And the idea is that, I guess they kind of were coming from the premise that it's like, if you're well off, you are going to drink, but it's not going to be problematic.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be a moderate drinker.
Right.
Whereas if you're a lower income,
that instability,
you may not drink, but if you do drink, there's a pretty good likelihood that you're going to be a heavy drinker and it's going to be problematic.
Yeah.
And their position was that this is support that on a genetic level,
yeah,
the stresses of poverty can kick in coping strategies or things like alcoholism.
Absolutely.
So it's a weird, they did a weird loop around. I thought this article was one of the worst I've ever read in explaining things. Like
yeah.
It was
from NPR too. They do a pretty good job.
This was terrible.
It was not that good.
Yeah.
Or was it BBC?
I don't know. Either way, I would expect more.
Yeah.
Like I had to read it 5 or 6 times, and just the way that it was laid out and the way they explained
it was a little
it.
Awkward. Maybe they were drunk.
They were, but they were from a higher income bracket, so it's cool.
Yeah, Emily and I, you make a little bit more money as you progress through your careers, and we got to a point where I was like, how about this? Less wine, better wine was the motto in our home.
I think another way to put that is quality over quantity, right?
Yeah, but yeah. We like less wine.
Less wine, better wine.
Yeah.
Good for you.
So maybe a little bit more per bottle, but not as many. We're not like drinking the Mad Dog every night like we used to do back in our younger days.
And then breaking the bottle over each other's heads.
That swill.
Man, Mad Dog, jeez.
I had that once back in college.
It is sweet stuff.
It's gross. I mean, can they even call that wine?
No.
It's just like fruity alcohol.
Pretty much.
Which is, I guess, what wine is.
Yeah.
Okay, what's next, my friend?
My friend, we're going to go over briefly the story of one Reg Spears, a man who I imagine was born Reginald Spears.
Probably.
But back in the 60s, Reg Spears, who was, I believe, an Australian national.
Of course he was.
Living in London, somewhere in Great Britain, which includes London, we've been told. He found himself in a pickle. I think he needed to get back for his daughter or his kid's birthday.
Yeah.
But he didn't have the money to fly from Australia or from London to Australia.
It's an expensive plane ticket.
So he mailed himself.
He did, and oddly enough, he's not the first person to do this. They list people like Henry Bray, Johann Beck, and May Piersdorf. Is May a woman?
I would guess.
Okay, I was about to say it seems like such a guy thing to do.
It does.
It's so dumb.
Remember, one of the first people to go over Niagara Falls in a barrel and live was a woman.
That's right.
Remember, she had her cat with her.
She mailed herself from the top to the bottom. So what happened here? The interesting thing I thought was that the cost of a plane ticket was actually less expensive than mailing, but he found a little loophole, which was called COD.
That's right.
A cash on delivery.
Yeah, and if he shipped himself to somebody who he knew wasn't going to be there to cough up the money, he could just kind of sneak out of his crate once he arrived in Australia, and that's exactly what he did.
That's right. He was put in a storage shed, and he got out, and he went home.
Yeah.
That was it.
And he made it to the party, and he had a heck of a story to tell.
That's right. So good for you, Reg Spears.
Sticking it to the man.
I imagine it's very dangerous, and I think we had the graphic up of the space of the box that he was in.
Oh, really?
It does not look comfortable.
No, that's Schrodinger's cat.
No. Very funny.
Thank you.
All right, so that's all we have this week here in the Internet Roundup headquarters.
The Internet has been rounded up.
So we will see you next week.
So as you can see, they've used a really nice and simple format. They've made it very conversational as well, which is great. So what my hope is for you guys is that we're going to follow this process. So today is what you're going to be working on in your groups. Hopefully someone's printed this off, but like I said, I'll make sure that I get it across to you via WeChat as well. So the number one that you want to do, I'd probably go with first doing the purpose of your podcast. So what do you want your podcast to be about? What's it going to be talking about? How's it going to inspire people? That sort of thing. Okay, so the purpose of your podcast, do you want to make it a fun one? Do you want to make it informative? Do you want to make it scary? Whatever you wish. Then podcast name, so come up with a good name. You would have, because we've done the marketing already, you understand the importance of self-branding and having a good name. So come up with a good name for your podcast. Then I want you to have a think about your first topic. So if you're going to be doing serial killers, maybe your topic would be Ted Bundy. He's one of my favorite serial killers. So maybe it would be Ted Bundy. And the purpose of your podcast is serial, you can spell serial killers. Podcast name is Die Once, Die Well. I just came up with that. Okay, so podcaster name, because there's going to be 4 of you. So there'll be Fiona, Francis, Isabel, and Bagel. Because I'm clearly very hungry. Okay, so we're all going to do the serial killer thing, but I want you to do your research separately, and that's what makes it more of a conversation. So no one's researching the same aspect. So I might want to talk about his upbringing. So I'll talk about his youth. Bagel really loves like the court of law and everything, so he's going to talk about the trials, so he'll do all the research on the trials. Frances loves all the stabby stuff, so she's going to look at the specific killings, so what he did. And then Isabel is going to look at the victims, okay? Who they were, where they were, why he chose them as particular victims. Then on the podcast day, everyone comes together with your notes, and you saw in the video that the guys had their notes ready, had their microphones on. You can just have sort of a phone in between you or whatever, just so we can record your voice. And you're going to be doing it in front of a live audience. So your classmates will be there listening and enjoying and interacting. So you can make it scary or funny, whatever you wish. So what you'd have to do then, so once you've decided all of this, You as an individual are going to go back and do your research, and I'll make a bit of a research sheet for you. I probably just use the same, the research helper that I usually do. You don't have to do references or anything for this, but you do need to go, like, jump in and get your research. I don't mind if you get the information from Wikipedia. I'd suggest not. Try and go a little bit deeper and go beyond that. But yeah, and so you all come individually. Nobody knows what the other ones read or talked about, and you work out how you're going to talk about it. So you want Fiona to start, and then maybe Bagel has some information about his youth because they talked about that in the trial, and then it comes more of a conversation. The first one might be a little bit clunky, but that's okay. The more podcasts you listen to, the better you're going to get at them. But again, it's just trying to improve your conversational English and make sure that I can monitor your ongoing development. So I'm going to get this through to you, and that's what you need to do for the rest of the class today. Other than that, thank you very much for all your hard work this week. I'm talking in the past, so hopefully you did work hard this week. Have a great weekend, and I will see you next week. Oh, as usual, always available on WeChat. If you have any questions about this, please do it in the group WeChat, because many of you might have the same question, and then I can just answer everybody. Please monitor the group WeChat on a daily basis so that you are up to date with everything. Okay, thanks guys, happy weekend, bye.